everybody. Welcome back to TMR's Master Advisor series. I'm going to go ahead and get started because we have a couple of technical issues we're working through. I'll let you know about those in a second, but we're really excited to see everyone. Today is January 25th. This is episode number 83. We are really excited today to be joined by ASTA's Alvin Adriano, who's a previous guest on this series. He's going to be talking to us about branding. But first, I do want to make some announcements, and I just want to talk a little bit about some technical issues we're having. The first is just a couple of tips if you're new to this series. You can switch into speaker view on Zoom, and that's going to be the best way to watch today's session. And then you can also open up the chat on the bottom right and drop any questions or comments in there. If you want to hit the more on Zoom, sometimes the chat option is there as well. We're going to do our best to grab those questions and comments as we go along today. So if you have anything to say, anything to ask, please go ahead. Don't be shy in there. I also want to thank everyone who came out for our last session where we talked a little bit about social media. It was a couple of weeks ago with Matt Zerboni. That was a fun session. It really was a nice way to kick off 2024. I was really excited to talk to Matt. If you didn't catch that episode, it's available in full for free and on demand on our YouTube page. We're going to drop the link to that page in the chat right now. And then one last announcement. We were having some technical difficulties getting the Zoom started. We know there's some name confusion on the Zoom. We're working through that right now. I know Alvin is our guest, who's gracious enough to lend us his time today, is having some issues. He's on his phone and his hotspot right now. So hopefully everything will go well, but just something to be aware of over the next 45 minutes or so. All right, so with that all the way, with everything hopefully ironed out, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Alvin to the show. Again, I'm sure a lot of you know Alvin from his work with ASTA, from his previous appearance here. And first thing I want to do is just thank you, Alvin. I know things were hectic a couple minutes ago, but I really appreciate your time today and really excited to talk to you.
Well, hi, everyone. First off, thank you, Dan, for inviting me back to the show. Really excited to be here, and Happy New Year to everyone who's actually watching. For those who don't know me, my name is Alvin Adriano. I'm the Director of Industry Affairs at ASTA, which is the American Society of Travel Advisors. And I've been working there for a little shy than 2 years, working on initiatives focused on education, advocacy, community development, and just really digging in deep just to enhance the already amazing content at ASTA, sharing my real life experiences and insights, and just prioritizing humanizing their efforts. So I've been blessed, as Dan mentioned. I've been in industry for a long time. Which would you call an industry baby? I grew up in an industry with my family, having an agency for over 34 years now.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Alvin, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we do like to show our support for ASTA because we know how important the organization is for the travel industry and the travel trade. Is there anything you want the advisors on the call to be aware of, or anything you want them to know about before we get started today talking about branding?
Of course. I mean, branding is just such an absolutely important thing, especially as an entrepreneur. Being able to promote yourself and have clients or consumers identify with your unique selling proposition. We'll talk a little bit more about emotional branding, which isn't a little bit more in-depth than traditional branding, but yeah, we'll dive into that soon.
All right, cool. All right, so let's go ahead. Emotional branding. I know you were here a couple of years ago. We spoke about emotional branding. I know a lot of advisors are kicking off 2024, thinking about their business, thinking about who they want to attract in their business. It seems like the perfect time to start on these new business plans, to start on these new initiatives, to take an overview of how you're presenting yourself to consumers. We've done it at TMR recently. We're looking at our brand, things like that. I'm sure it's a worldwide thing. I was hoping you could kick us off by sort of giving us your definition of what emotional branding is and why it's important for travel advisors.
Well, absolutely. I think that it's a very important, just because as you see how the world is, the world's very emotional with heightened sensitivity, uncertainty lying wherever region in the world that you are. And emotional branding is really about making your marketing more personable, creating a strong bond between you and your clients, and building trust and loyalty. It's tapping into those emotional strings and sharing their values, aligning with the morals and principles, and then sparking emotions that drives human behavior. It's really cultivating that trust and loyalty by using emotions.
I know when we talk about the term branding, we think about a logo, we maybe think about how your website looks, how your storefront is, maybe think about the tagline, your email signatures, things like that. How does emotional branding fit with those? Are those elements of emotional branding, or those things that advisors should start thinking about when they're thinking about this topic in particular?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, when you think about branding itself, that's more of the traditional trying to build visibility and awareness for your brand, trying to get into the eyes of your consumers or to your audience. But when you look at every touch point, every type of marketing, every way that you communicate with your client, it's what emotions do they perceive you as,
Yeah.
and it's important now, especially coming from the pandemic a couple years ago, where fear was such an important emotion that we had to overcome. When you talk about these powerful emotional drivers like fear and hope, what does that convey to your clients? When they look at your service, does it feel that what emotions do you strike upon them? And that's really important because when you look at some of the bigger brands like Starbucks and Nike and Coca-Cola, some of these brands have long-lasting customer loyalty that extends farther than their promotions and really, ties into the audience that they're trying to attract.
Yeah. Yeah, fear is an interesting one. I know a lot of companies and a lot of maybe news publications are driven by fear. Like it's interesting for you to say that because I know that's a lot of the business. Like the tabloids here in New York, I know.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of fear driven in that. You mentioned a couple of companies, Alvin, and I was hoping we just talk a little bit about them, a little bit about maybe what emotions they can perceive, what emotions they try to connect with their audience. And then we could talk a little bit about maybe how this fits in as a travel agency owner or a travel advisor.
Sure.
But you mentioned Starbucks. Like, can we start with that one? Like, what do you think? How do you think Starbucks is positioning itself with its consumers? I know there's an incredible level of loyalty with
Yeah.
Starbucks users, and I'm sure emotions have something to do with that.
Course, of course. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but I love the Starbucks brand. I think it's so great to watch how it's evolved. And for any Starbucks coffee drinkers out there, and I'm sorry to tell you, but it's probably not the best coffee in the world. But no matter what, it does drive a premium. It's the emotional connection that it has with its customers or its loyalists. It's the difference why someone will wait 10 minutes in line instead of going past and going to get a $5 coffee down the street. When you look at what they provide, it's not the product of a cup of coffee itself. It's the experience that you come when you enter into their locations. The smell of coffee, the customer service, the music, the mugs and the free Wi-Fi. All of these play in part on the emotions that they want to convey to their clients because it's an experience first. You can also see other brands that do very well with emotional branding, just like Disney. When you think of Disney, you think of creativity and imagination. You think of worlds, and it's great because children. You think that children are the drivers of these things, but it's really the parents who get to relive nostalgia throughout their childhood. And then you have bigger brands like Harley Davidson, the rugged, the outdoorsy, the confidence. Those are the brands that tie into their customers because they go farther beyond their actual service and connect them on a deeper level.
Yeah, it does. It a lot. I mean, you mentioned Nike, Starbucks, like Disney. It a lot of it feels like you're not buying the product almost. Like
Mhm.
you are buying a product, but you're buying membership to some kind of club
Yep,
that yeah, like that it seems like seems like a major thing with a lot of these brands, a lot of these more iconic brands that we're talking about.
exactly. I mean, if you look, you mentioned Nike, and if you look at the promotion, you rarely see the actual apparel or shoes on it. It's more of inspirational, as in, I'm a hero. Find the hero in yourself. Just do it. They lean into the, hey, you can do it yourself by being disciplined and strong and see yourself as a hero. That's the marketing that Nike is predicting, not being the best sports shoe, but being able to find the hero inside yourself.
Yeah, it seems like Nike in particular markets itself as a big you need this equipment almost to
Mhm.
to reach whatever goal you're trying to reach. I know like New Year's
Exactly.
resolution, I know it's the 25th of January, so New Year's resolutions may be out the window for a lot of people right now. But it seems like when you think about your New Year's resolution, these fitness brands are trying to hit you hard. And in order to play with that, like you
Mhm.
need us to help you on your journey. Like this is what's going to make your life easier. This is what the people maybe you're aspiring to be like. This is the kind of equipment, the kind of stuff, the kind of club they're in. Does that
Exactly.
make sense? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we all are driven to communities. We're all driven to things that make us feel a certain way. It's the same reason why people buy Mercedes Benz. And I would like to think it's because it's a quality car, but really it's the way that it makes someone feel when they drive past someone else. How does it make myself feel? And when you look at yourself as a travel advisor, we all understand, we don't sell products, we sell service. But what does those services actually mean? Those service is an actual experience, and experiences drives desire. And those desires are what you need to connect, how you can leverage your clients so that they know whether it's security, whether it's safety. When you look at some of the ways that the travel influencers today drive their markets, it's through envy. Envy is such a powerful emotion that drives people and their human behaviors to do certain things. Even myself as a travel advisor, I've traveled all over the place, and I see some of the places on my social media feed, and I'm jealous. Like, where did they go? So again, these emotional drivers really um, move us in a certain way in which we make decisions.
All right. So I have a couple great questions, one from Jennifer, one from Sheila.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask them to you, Alvin, but I just want to get a little bit more into how this is impacting travel advisors.
Sure.
And then we'll pull those two questions in. You spoke a little bit about it just now, but can you just talk about why it's important for travel advisors to have an understanding of emotional branding? How does that deepen the connection they might have with their clients?
I mean, again, I mentioned it earlier. We don't sell products, we sell experiences. And when we understand the services that we sell, especially as emotional as the world has become, what kind of core values do you want your brand to represent? We talk about the health scares, now the uncertainty of war, trust. When we think about honesty when it comes to a company, that's expected. Everyone is supposed to be honest and transparent in their communications and their business practices. But trust is something more intimate, something more engaging, and it's more something that's earned between you and your client. We work in the consulting industry where we consult and give advice and give guidance to our clients. Do they feel uncertain after a conversation? Do they feel trusted or secure? Do they feel like their preferences and needs are addressed or accommodating by that person that's consulting them? Those are the things that we're trying to move towards, because again, the world has become so distracted with so many different emotions right now. So trying to become an emotional stakeholder in your client's mind is very, very important as a travel advisor moving forward.
All right. So Jennifer Walker, she's a good question, and I think it goes to what we were saying. I mean, Alvin, I have it written down. You've mentioned security, safety, trust. It seems like a big part of the what you want to convey to your clients is that your investment in these vacations, these trips, your investment in
Mhm.
travel is going to be safe with me. If things do go wrong, we obviously live in a post-COVID world now, but seeing so many things go wrong with storms, with acts of God, as the insurance companies will say now, and with COVID, you need that kind of level of trust. So Jennifer asks, what would be examples if you're trying to convey that you're a calm, relaxed person to work with, not excitable, trustworthy, but rather trustworthy and friendly. I mean, how can travel advisors think about that in their communications to their clients?
I mean, when you look at your marketing, your brands, your fonts, your colors, when you look at how playful it is when it comes, you look at the Disney font. I mean, it's very childish in the way where it looks like hand script and calligraphy, and you look something more as Forbes, where it's
Yeah.
more Times Roman. And it starts with understanding what your core values are. And everyone says the same, where it's, hey, it could be safety, it could be customer service, it could be honesty, which is fine. But when you go down and really dig down, I encourage everyone to kind of write down 10 of your core values and write them down in a list so you can try to prioritize them as much as you can. Then nail those down to the top five and then the top three. And once you do that exercise, you'll start realizing which characteristics and values that really define your brand. And sometimes as our agencies start evolving, sometimes our brand represents something that we don't personally represent. It's because the brand exceeds who we are because they're larger and they're growing and because our customer base is growing. So again, when you start saying calm and what was the other ones?
Yeah, trustworthy and friendly.
Trustworthy. It's
Yeah.
just making sure you're clear communications, being there when they need you the most, making sure that although their requests are heard, that you make sure that they're noted and you talk through it with them. It's not in the world where conversation is less of a commodity than it was before, where now text and emails are the form of communication. I think just having that real life person makes a big difference in people's lives.
Yeah. It's interesting, like with the way you're speaking about that, Alvin, and you spoke about Disney a little bit. I think the airline industry is a great example of this because there's so many, well, there's less now, obviously, with consolidation, but there's so
Yep.
many choices for airlines. If you look at how the low cost carriers or the ultra low cost carriers are marketing themselves versus maybe how the big four here in the
Hmm.
US or how the bigger ones in Canada are marketing themselves, there is such a stark difference
Yeah,
and how like a Delta is marketing itself now versus like a Spirit or Frontier or even the
exactly.
Southwest. Like it does seem that they've all made conscious decisions to appeal and connect to the type of guests they're trying to attract.
Exactly. I mean, they've changed their approach to be more of lifestyle experiences. You can see it with their tier programs, access to lounges, amenities and benefits and during flights. They're partnering with other retail stores to make it a full service experience in that space. So again, brands are starting to realize that there are connections and correlations between other brands and other emotions that other brands portray and aligning themselves now. I mean, it was a great thing to see some of the alliances that they've made, but partnerships. I mean, the emotion consumers will either support or abandon brands that represent their core values. And you can see it with Patagonia, giving back to the community, Trader Joe's giving back to the community. Those are brands that know and understand their core value, I mean core clients.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into some more, but I think it seems to be important for advisors to recognize this and realize this and understand it's a conscious choice. I
Hmm.
know, like you mentioned, the agency you were working with, it was a 30 year plus. It's obviously built a brand. But a lot of the way the brand has been built was specifically made a choice that was made in
Hmm.
order to pursue whatever kind of client you want to pursue. Like it's just something that doesn't happen by accident.
Hmm. It doesn't matter. And sometimes when you start digging down deep and understanding what it is that you want to represent, you find things as you start evolving your professionalism and your career, what really matters to you. Giving opportunity, providing support, allowing people to explore. And again, these are all things that are the needs of our clients, because the reason why we travel isn't because of, no one goes on a vacation to say, I spent $5,000, had a great time. They go and tell them how their life has changed, the things, the experiences, and the people that they've met, the food that they eat. All of these things are why people go on vacations, not the amount of money, not the rationale when it comes to budget and the X's and O's, but the experiences itself.
All right. So again, if anyone has any more questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll hopefully grab them as we go along the next 20-25 minutes or so. So Alvin, I have a question, and this is something I've thought about. We've had a lot of luxury guests on over the past 12 months or so. And a lot of the topics we talked about was attracting that luxury guest or moving towards selling more luxury. Because obviously that's a little more profitable for
Mhm.
agencies and things like that. And my question was always, and I got different answers for this, was like, are you is it your agencies attracting are you branding your agency as a luxury agency or is your clients growing into the luxury space with you? And a lot of different answers came with that. And I think that sort of has some parallels here. Um, when advisors are thinking about their branding, is it a mistake to think about branding your agency in order to best serve the clients you have now? Or is it like, should they have a different mindset where they're thinking about whatever clients they're aspiring to have in the future? That's who they should be branding to. Does that make sense? I know that was a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a choice. it's a choice, and that's where I was leading up to when your brand represents something that you don't want to do, or you might have to reinvent your business. Sometimes our brands grow and they align with different people, and we have to pivot. No.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
if it went out. And sometimes we have to pivot, and you can see that with some of the brands like who has pivot. I think J. Crew pivoted before. Gap has pivoted before. Burlington Coat Factory has pivoted before, where they identified their core and they haven't attracted the demographics they wanted, and they started shifting towards the ones that they valued the most, that were making them profitable. Now, when you start digging down and figuring out where your brand should be, it's important. Can you guys still see me?
Yeah, you're good. We'll
Okay.
we'll yeah.
Okay. It's important that you understand what it is that your clients really want. I mean, if you want to be luxury, then you have to be luxury itself. And what I mean by that is that you have to give the impression of being luxury, whether it's being visible with other brands that are in that space, like Tiffany and Company,
Yeah.
Hermes. You know, I talked about Mercedes. Those are represent to the 1%, the refined, the lavish, and a lot of people aspire to be that, but fall short on expectations because they aren't able to be that luxury market. We struggled um, trying to identify myself. The agency went through different successions, whether it's my parents to myself to my wife to my sister. Um, but each individual brought their own flair, their own idea of our clients, and we had to understand that this is our core clients, but we had to make a separate one for ourselves, whether we opened another branch being specific for luxury or one specifically for cruises. It's hard to do vanilla marketing trying to capture a net for all. And what happens when you do vanilla marketing like that, you capture no one, because you identify or you show to your clients that you really don't know who your core clients are.
Yeah, and I would love to talk a little bit about how your agencies change. I think that's going to be a great example for people. But you just mentioned that kind of generic, you call it vanilla, but that kind of that marketing. And I have a pretty good question in the chat from Michael. He says, my agency is in a smaller town with very few options for agencies. So how does an agency balance branding itself as a general practitioner, which is booking all kinds of travel, with trying to focus on specific niches? All the experts say to focus on niches, which we do,
Hmm?
but we also book all types of travel because that's the demand. So what's the emotional branding and balance supposed to look like?
Well, I mean, if I think his name's Michael, when you're trying to identify your ideal demographic, is it in your local town, or is it reaching out? Because now with the networks that we have with social media, obtaining or attracting clients can be from anywhere in any place. Being able to identify clients in your own local is a lot different because you have different regional, preferences, whether it's food, whether it's music, whether it's the way people live, what drives them. I live in an area away from, well, I used to live in DC where, it was a little bit different the way we approach things. Now living in Virginia Beach, it's a little bit more loose and leisurely, and people rarely dress up, but the way that they communicate differs from the way that they communicate in the bigger cities. So I think in the smaller city, they prioritize more of the community. So getting involved in community events, being seen as the expert in there makes a big difference, because again, when you are trying to portray, your brand's trying to portray itself, is it seen as an expert? Is it seen as someone that knows and is relevant into the industry? And especially for the travel industry, in the smaller community, being known and being connected in the networks of the travel industry space is great. Getting photo ops on, I think a couple of new cruise ships lines opened up, and again, social media is a great way to build credibility, whether it's positive or negative, and just showing influence.
Yeah, and I know I'm hoping we have 100 plus advisors with us right now. So if anyone has experience with this, I'd love to hear from you as well. But it seems to be a difficult question to be able to ask is, um, I guess loyalty to who your client base is, and loyalty to who you want your client base to be. I know it's a very difficult choice to make, and especially talking about branding, because if you do want to move up in a luxury space, it might feel like you're
Yeah.
deserting some of your mass market or lower end clients who have been fairly loyal to you.
Mhm. I mean, it's really not shifting or pivoting. It's really just pinpointing what it is or who it is that you really want to serve. Like as you start growing up, of course, when you're building up your book of business, you try to cater to everyone. But as you start understanding where where your uniqueness is, where you can differentiate yourself, you'll start to identify clients that you really love to sell to. And as you start working with suppliers, those that prioritize your business and your success, you'll start to gravitate to those. And then aligning yourself with the suppliers that align with your core values makes it even more easier for us to sell because they understand what you and your clients are looking for, what experiences you are trying to create for your clients.
So we have another question kind of along those lines. This one's from Jennifer Walker. She says, if pivoting to attract certain clients, any advice on how to handle requests that come in from existing clients who maybe no longer fall into the ideal client realm? She says an example is if I give up doing cheap Caribbean ocean cruises to focus on river or expedition cruises, what would be the good way to handle the request that comes from someone looking for those cheap Caribbean
I
cruises?
know it's the hardest. It's really the hardest when you have to convert or shift some of your clientele, and really it's being honest and being transparent and just asking why. And you have to care to know why. It's not just why do you want to stick with Caribbean cruises, but what is it? Is it the budget? Is it the timing? And understanding that to provide solutions in a space where people don't think they have many, that's what advisors are there for. They're here to find solutions, but if we can't find solutions because you're not asking the right questions, it makes it really hard to identify your core clients because it's easy to sell cruises. It's easy to sell because there's just so much marketing in the world. But why do they want to buy from you? That's where you differentiate yourself. Asking those questions, why, how, what can you do? I mean, the reason why things are luxury is because of the details that they do. The things the little zippers they do, the hand make. For you as an advisor, most of us, we're home businesses. Our brand are ourselves. And so when you start connecting with your clients, how do you want to be represented to your clients for yourself? And as your brand grows, it's important that when they feel secure like that, they're trusting in you and you as a person.
Yeah. So it seems like a way of looking at this also, which I may be overlooking too, is that your branding isn't necessarily the suppliers you're partnered with or the products you're selling. It's how you're representing yourself. It's how you're communicating to your client. Is that a better way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, you align with suppliers because they're the brand that you are selling, but your brand itself is the reason why people buy from you. It's the safety, the security, it's the trust, it's the connection. How many times do we take orders from people? I don't know about everyone that's watching, but I feel that customer service is lacking as we continually grow older and older, where Southern hospitality and that charm has completely not gone all the way, but it's not as responsive as it used to be. And those are things that people care about now. In the world of immediate gratifications, just getting someone to talk to you on the phone and just talking is such an important thing that we've learned during the pandemic, that people just want connection and just to hear advice and to talk about what they really want in their vacation or their desires.
Yeah. So I guess realizing why people are buying from you, connecting on that level, making sure your brand is more than just the products you sell. And again, I know there's more questions in the chat about this, but it doesn't seem that branding yourself as a luxury agency, that doesn't there's no rule that says you can't sell Royal Caribbean if you're branded as an ultra luxury agency,
Yeah.
if that's what your clients want.
No, I mean, you know, going back to what we spoke about earlier, it's your service. Whether you charge
Yeah.
$500, $1,000 for a consultation fee and booking Royal Caribbean, that's completely fine. We understand that travel it's more complex than anything else. It's not just booking that cruise; it's everything else before the cruise, getting to that cruise, during the cruise, the preparation before it. There's a lot of things that's involved that people just discount themselves because we do it for free already. But when you start understanding where we provide value, it's a lot of the things that we do for free. And that's what I try to convey. Like when you start looking at the things that we do, whether it's communications, advocating for our clients, talking to suppliers, those things matter. And so verbalizing, communicating with your clients really will show the value that you bring.
So we talked a little bit about logo, a little bit about just the things that I get, the things that might go into emotional branding, Alvin. Like communication is obviously very important in how you're talking and how you're addressing your clients. Logos are important, taglines, emails, everything is like that. We mentioned some other brands in the luxury space or in the other spaces. So if that's the kind of client you want to tell, you want to attract maybe the client who's going to Mercedes or the client who's going to a Tesla,
Mhm.
or you mentioned Nike. Those are maybe a good idea to look at those brands, see what kind of emotions you feel when you're
Yep.
looking at those brands or considering those brands.
Yeah. I also say too, it's moving from presence to uniqueness. When we talk about how a brand's to be perceived, sometimes I'll see at trade shows travel advisors with these 49 cents pens or really, really cheap pens, and they're trying to sell luxury. And, it may seem insignificant, but is your brand represented in that 29-cent pen? You know, like does someone feel like that represents you? One of the things that I loved about Viking, I went on a Viking cruise and they sent me a package with I think it was a pouch with embroidery on it. And it gave me a quote, I forgot what the quote is, but it was good. It made me feel like this is important and made it feel more personalized. But when you buy trinkets or items that are to represent your brand, you want to make sure that it triggers an emotion. Like I've heard things where advisors have used night lights in cruise ships because those are things that you don't have lights. So when people or travelers are on the cruise ships, they put a night and they think of, hey, that's great. My advisor thought of that before me. This is why I love them. Or representation of looking beyond just the specific needs in front, but thinking out past that. I mean, that's why it's important that you're intentful in everything that you do in every touch point with your clients.
Yeah, and I know like personal appearance is a big one too. I think we've talked about that on this show before. Like how you present yourself, how you look is going to be
Hmm.
important if you're meeting clients in person, if you want to convey a certain thing. Like
Of
you
course.
mentioned, like the swag your agency offers, things like that. Everything is going to be incredibly important, and it's something that is so fluid now with so many people home base. I mean, you don't have to do a major renovation of a storefront anymore. You can change things pretty quickly, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and the typical idea of professionalism has changed, especially with the new, working from home, virtual, hybrid methods. I think I don't know about everyone, but I think jeans are okay now in the workforce. I'm hoping so. But there's it's not about. I mean, it is how you present yourself, but it's really how how intentful you are in finding purpose in the service that you provide. You know, some people, I've seen the most passionate people be successful because their customers know that they're behind them 100%. And it speaks volume as we're ramping up the industry now, going back to over 2019. And you can see, this is an opportunity for many advisors to really build that loyal customer base moving forward.
Yeah. All right. So if anyone else has questions, we have a little less than 10 minutes left. I did want to ask Alvin because I heard you say it and I thought it'd be a really interesting thing a thread to get on. You mentioned your agency has gone through so many different iterations with how it's been passed on throughout your family. When it was your turn to sort of look at your agency as a whole and make those decisions, I was curious, was there stuff in your brand or elements of the agency that you knew were intricate and so important that they weren't going to be changed? And were there other things that you wanted to change in order to incorporate a little more of yourself into it? Um, and could you share those with us?
Yeah, I mean, my family's travel agency specifically focused on travel to and from the Philippines. and our customer base focused on Filipinos traveling back and forth. And at the time, I wasn't very fluent in the native language Tagalog, so I had a hard time connecting with our clients. And so I mistakes are to happen. And so one of my mistakes in my early career was trying to convert them into things that they were not. They were not looking for that premium uh, product. They were not looking for extra amenities. And so I learned from my mistakes because customers left. And I didn't understand because I thought I could sell what I wanted to them. And this is a great example where my brand was different from what I needed to be for my company. And so I had to learn that this brand, the travel agency had to maintain its reputation and strength in this place. And as I grew other sectors, whether it's river cruising, cruises, FITs, that it would have to take a different meaning. And so we ended up dividing the company into two and having two focuses so that
Oh,
the
wow.
clients were not confused. It was hard to relate a premium product when you're selling economical rates and economical or budget-friendly tours. So again, I mean, it was miscommunication at that point, and so we had to identify, okay, what works for our clients, what works for this demographic, and how can we make it easier? Because in the world of distraction, clients don't have time to determine what it is that you are. They just need to know upfront, this is who I serve, this is what I am, this is who I want to represent, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's so important. I think people know be upfront about who you are is going to be
Mhm.
important because again, like you mentioned, instant gratification now, and of course, you order something on Amazon, it's going to arrive. It could arrive at your doorstep the next morning, and people want things. They want things now, and
Yeah.
people don't want it. As bad as it sounds, people. It seems like people don't want to take the time to learn about you if you're trying to sell them
Yeah.
something.
And I don't know where it was. The first impressions when we first, you know, I'm getting old now, but I think the first impression takes like 3 or 5 seconds when you meet someone. On the internet, it's even faster. I mean, you're going through people's feeds, through people's websites. The moment they look at you and they automatically judge, okay, is this a person that I trust? Do I feel safe? And if it's not, they move on. And that's where it goes. And that's where we're trying to hit. What emotions, again, if you're playful, if you're energetic, that's a different feeling or vibe that you're trying to portray. But it's not miscommunicating who and what you represent.
Okay. And then I'm curious. I mean, you said there was sort of two different brands with your agency, and that helped the differentiate between the two types of things you were trying to sell, the two types of clients you were trying to service. Did you get a lot of crossover with clients who maybe were interested in, like you mentioned, the travel back and forth, and then they also wanted to partake in the other premium side of the business? Was there a lot of crossover?
It was just a lot of educating. There was a lot of honest discussion. But what I really learned most is that saying the word no opens the opportunity for others to say yes. A lot of times we stand in our own way because of the uncertainty of not knowing if this is going to work or not. But that's the feeling that you have to embrace as an entrepreneur. And if you're following a value that really represents yourself, it will translate to bring other people's towards you, because passion and desire, all of that, when it exudes from your brand, people are attracted to that. People aren't attracted, like we said, vanilla marketing. If you just say that you're something but not live it, that's why emotional branding, it's not like a strategy, it's a lifestyle in the way that you communicate with your clients. I mean, you know, we all have those friends that we like and friends that we don't like. Usually community. So if your clients a little bit more and it's dreadful, then that may not be your core clients. Maybe it's something that you need to move on forward. And that's what we identified. Again, as we moved up in our evolution, we moved up to new suppliers. We moved up to our expectations of ourselves, and our clients changed, and those who didn't, just we just had to say goodbye.
Yeah, that is I know you broke up a little bit there, Alan, but I think that's such a great lesson. I mean, I think we did one master specifically on how to say no to a client.
Yeah.
which is a lesson I know a lot of people learned over the last year. Simply one of the reasons was because how busy everything was and how great business was. It was just impossible to service so many clients. But
Hmm.
being able to say no simply because you're on a journey that they maybe don't want to be a part of, or you're on a journey that maybe doesn't fit what they're looking for anymore, is not a bad thing. Like it's something that
Yeah.
advisors maybe should be okay with.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great example. Someone, one of my mentors told me, like, we're all characters in the story, but not every character makes it to every chapter. And so, they could be part of your journey and they could, I had to say no to some of our original clients, but it's because the business changed, evolution changed, and the needs of the clients change, and what we represent changed. And so, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's really understanding that that's what the brand became. And I'm happy for that. The customers that we dealt with were happy with the changes that we made, and it just made us stronger, and it made us realize what it who and what we actually represented.
Yeah. And last question, Alvin, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot with this one. I know you have a role with ASTA now, and I know ASTA itself is a brand. I know it's an important association as well. What kind of things, when advisors think about ASTA, do you want them to think about? Whether they're members, whether they're non-members, whether they're US based, or we have a lot of Canadian readers as well. I mean, what kind of things do you think ASTA tries to convey and connect with advisors on?
Well, when I joined ASTA, we talk about purpose and intent. And one of the reasons why I joined was because I believe in this industry. I talked about how I grew up in the industry. Uh, I think it's about credibility and visibility for consumers now. For the longest time, we were very defensive in our industry, where we would defend why we had careers. ASTA's taken a lot more consumer focused approach. We're out telling on top of the mountains, yelling to the media and consumers that travel advisors, it's a great career. I know many people who had successful careers. And even now, in reports of, I think the Bureau of Labor has seen a 20% increase on job outlook. So, the myths, we're debunking all the myths, and the narrative that travel
Yeah.
advisors are not a career. And we're also highlighting the fact that there's a lot of other careers that have stemmed up from travel advisors. Now the need for marketing, need for IT, need for accounting and business, and now travel advisor support. I mean, there's a wide range of skills needed, not just frontline sales and marketing, but so much that support the travel advisor community.
All right, so just to wrap up, I love to do this at the end of these sessions. Just a little bit about what we spoke about today. Branding is important. Think about the brands you're attracted to, why you're attracted to. Think about who your client is and who you want your client to be. Think about your logo, your website, your email. Think about how you appear, and think about every single touch point you have with your clients. And if you can wrap that in one brand, I know it seems like a difficult task. That's a good way to get started. Alvin, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you're on your phone, which I know is not the most comfortable thing, but I really do appreciate all your candor and all your advice today.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. The easiest way for anyone to start getting involved or focus on emotional branding, I always say this clip, just make sure that your intent is as powerful as your content. The content that you put out there is purposeful, intentful, and it's the emotions that you want your clients to portray. So,
All right, well, Alvin, thank you so much. I know I'll see you at the Global Convention later this year with ASA, and I'll say hello then. I'm sure people will be at the River Expo and things like that. Hopefully, they'll be able to say hello to you there too. But thank you again. Thank you to all the attendees. We'll have some news on our next session pretty soon, but we'll be back. We're back on our regular schedule now. So hope to see everyone really soon. And thanks so much for coming out today.
thank you, everyone. Have a great one. Happy New Year's.